Hi, guys. Welcome to the J. Scott Outdoors podcast. I am actually blowing and going here north of Tucson, south of Casa Grande, on I-10. I left probably 5 o'clock in the morning, maybe a little bit before 5, on Tuesday morning to go to Sonora, Mexico to scout for some new Goulds turkey and Coues deer properties. Dara and I are always searching for new properties, new areas, and just trying to look at as many fresh properties as we can, and always search for those, giant Coues bucks and, actually good, solid Coues deer hunting properties that are glassable and, mountain ranches that we can hunt, the way we like to. And then finding those Goulds turkey properties, the mountain properties where the Goulds are, is always so fun. And this trip was no different. I went by myself. Actually met some of my contacts down in Mexico, and had a great trip. Looked at a handful of different properties, kind of all over, and traveled quite a bit. When I wasn't looking at properties, I was driving to other areas, and I tried to clump the properties. What I typically do is try and clump a few properties in the same area together, so that I can look at 2 or 3 properties a day. And Dar and I have used this tactic for many years, scouting and looking at new properties. An interesting thing that, it always rings true, and I'm always reminded every time I go down and looking at new properties is, you can drive around and look at tracks, look at water holes, look at country, hike up on knobs, look at sheds, and until you actually go and glass it, and I like to say until you go and hunt it, till you go and glass it during the same time frame. We typically hunt December, January time frame down in Sonora for Coues. Until you actually go down and hunt it, you really don't know what you have. I mean, you can run trail cameras, you can glass these properties, this time of year, and you can find specific bucks doing that. But in our business of trying to take, fully outfitted hunts and trying to do it-yourself type properties for other Coues deer fanatics, you never really know till you actually go and glass. You can set cameras and find a big buck or two, but most people that lease properties, want ranches from 4 to 10 tags. And even on the fully outfitted deal, an outfitter would barely survive if they only took 1 or 2 clients. So most of the ranches on our fully guided trips are, 5 tag ranches plus. And we typically do 2 fully guided trips each year, sometimes 3, sometimes just 2, but mostly just 2 trips. But I guess what I'm getting at is just a rule of thumb out there for you guys, and I think this goes true for like new units that you're going to hunt. I would highly recommend, like if you're scouting a new unit in, say, Arizona for Coues deer, go in January and hunt with your bow and like glass it out and see, what is there during the rut. Now keep in mind that brings in a whole nother equation of if you're at a property when they're rutting and then your season is not during the rut, you're going to have a different experience. But what I found is glassing in February or March, or even glassing in, September or August or October, you can't really get a sense or a feel of how a Mexico ranch is until you actually go in December and January during that time frame which you plan to hunt. So going back to the Arizona state land deal, if you go glass, say, Unit 34A south of Tucson, you've never been in the unit, well, the best time to go to see the unit at what I would think would be the best would be, right during the peak of the rut. So in January, take your bow, or don't even take your bow and just go glass. And if you went in glass for 4 or 5 days, I'm betting you would gather a bunch of intel and information that would help you make a decision whether that's a unit that you want to hunt, on the rifle hunts, even whether it's October, November, or December. Because if you see a unit in its best form, at least that there's bucks in that unit that that got your blood pressure up. Now, I'm going to tell you that if you go in January and you go back in October, we've talked about this before on lots of other podcasts, your activity level is normally going to be a lot different. In October, November, and even early December, you don't have near as much movement. Bucks are not chasing does. A lot of times in October, November, early December, those bucks are still in their bachelor groups. But you can learn a lot by going and glassing a unit during the rut. And, in Mexico, one of the challenges is we are actually hunting on the properties that, we don't have time to go to a new property because we're right during our current hunts. So that forces us to go, scout these properties in Mexico after the rut, usually in February, sometimes in early March. But, and another thing is, like, if that's the only time you can go, it's better than not going at all. But for sure, we always say it's kind of a crapshoot until you go hunt it. And you can gather, I like to try and find as many sheds as I can find. Ask the cowboy if they have, deer horns, deer antlers in the shed. Lion kills, anything that can give you any sort of idea as to, antler configuration. If you see 6 or 7 different sheds and they're all really good sheds, it's probably a pretty good indication that there's some age class around. When all you find is, little 70 and 80 and 90-inch bucks, probably a pretty good indication that there's a lot of young bucks around. Or maybe it's a ranch in Mexico that is, I've been to a bunch of ranches that, there's a ton of deer, 50, 60, 70, 80 deer days, and the biggest buck you'll see is 95 inches. So part of what we're always looking for is sheds. We're obviously looking at country. We're looking at how glassable is it, how accessible is it, where are the roads, does it have roads, but specifically, like, where are the roads in relation to different glassing knobs, ridge tops? A lot of properties may have roads, but where the roads are is not conducive to efficiently being able to get up on a high ridge or a high knob and, get to glassing right away. If you spend all your time hiking, you're not going to get as much glassing. A thing that we really like about Mexico is, you're not dealing with outside hunting pressure normally, unless the rancher's, slipping guys in on you. If you have an exclusive lease, you have the ability to, go and glass. But a lot of times it's access, and how can I efficiently access this ranch? Are the roads down in the very bottom of the desert floor and you have to hike up to, every single ridge? Or are there some nice roads that get you some elevation, then you can then throw on your pack and get even higher, get up on, get some vantage, to glass. So that's something else we're looking at. Other thing we're looking at is, water sources. Are there repressos or water tanks? They call them repressos down there. Are there pilas, which are water troughs? Are there papalotes, which are windmills? Where are the deer going to get their water, and turkeys for that matter? A lot of Goulds turkey properties, the better ones have a lot of water. So, asking the owner, where is the live water? Do you have any, creeks, little trickles? Do you have tinajas, which are springs, seeps that's seeping water out from the ground all year long? And you can learn a lot by talking to the vaqueros, which are the cowboys, or talking to the owners. But there's a lot to going in and scouting these ranches, and it's something usually Dar and I go together. He had some things going on with the real estate business that he couldn't leave. And I had a window. I had just gotten back from the National Wild Turkey Federation convention in Nashville, Tennessee, and I had some connections made with some of my contacts, and I just thought I need to get down there and check some new properties out. So it was a good trip. Found a couple of properties that I think will work really well for us. And there's always a little bit of unknown because, like I said, you go down there, you don't know exactly what you have until you really go hunt it. I think it takes like a good 6-7 days to really kind of get a good gauge or a good judge on, deer density, quality of deer, numbers of bucks in relation, to does, buck to doe ratios, and then how that property works or how that property fits with your style of hunting. If you're a run and gunner, and you like to walk ridge lines and glass off both sides, or if you're a guy that likes to, take your lunch and go up to a point and spend all day on one particular point. I mean, you got to kind of figure out what you want out of a property. And I think you can take that into hunting on and scouting on state land as well. Is that unit conducive to your style of hunting? Are you going to enjoy hunting that piece of ground or that piece of property, whether it be private or public? Like, does it fit what you like to do? So, those are all things that we're thinking about. Went to one property, found a buck I put a picture of it on my Instagram. I did not score it. I just eyeballing, probably 8-inch plus type eye guards, 10-inch type G2s, maybe better, 8 or 9 for sure type of G3s, it looked like 19, maybe even 20-inch main beams, a really solid buck, just kind of medium, just kind of average, good solid mass for a buck of that caliber. But, here's a buck probably pushing 130 as a 3x3. A 3-point that's, a stud. I think it's easy to base all of your, your desire to want to hunt a property off one shed. That's a double-edged sword because, for one, you don't know for sure if that shed was found on the property. You don't know if, I got a cousin down in Hermosillo that's on a desert ranch and, brought that up and, he puts it up there and, gets gringos to come and, oh, yeah, look at that giant buck, I'll take the ranch. So you have to take everything with a grain of salt, but it's sure fun. It's just fabulous going down there. Never ceases to amaze me how much I actually love being in Mexico. Woke up this morning and had probably 20, 25 mile an hour winds. Could hear it blowing. I woke up about 4:30, was excited to see the new property today, and was looking at videos and pictures from the last couple days scouting down there, and the wind was just howling. And anyway, I had a good day today and found some great potential Goulds turkey properties, and those are always a challenge to find just because of those birds are are pretty finicky as far as where they like to be. They have to have all the right ingredients. They have to have enough water. They have to have enough cover. If they don't have enough cover, the turkey eggs, in the summer, they're very susceptible to coyotes, foxes, skunks, eating those eggs. And those turkey poults, they're pretty susceptible to predation, as well as they need cover. If you get to a ranch that they're doing too much charcoal, they're cutting way too much of the underbrush. It's very common in Mexico, these ranches, and it brings a kind of a smile to my face, because years ago I took Steve Ranella, my friend, that hosts the Meat Eater TV and the Meat Eater podcast, on a Goulds turkey hunt down in Mexico. And when we got to the ranch, he had seen a bunch of smoke and asked me what that was. And I said it was the guys doing charcoal. And he kind of looked at me like, charcoal? Like they're really making charcoal? And I said, yeah. And rather than, want to storm out and go to the Goulds, go chase Goulds, he wanted to go to the charcoal pit and, talk to the guy, in his best Spanglish that he knew and that I knew, and ended up, it made a great show. He got the idea to, once he harvested his turkeys, to cook the turkeys over charcoal from that ranch. And Dar and I have seen it. Lots of ranches down there do charcoal, and I don't know exactly what they're selling those bags for, but big, like 50-pound bags compared to what we buy them in our the briquettes or what have you in Walmart or in the supermarkets in Arizona. It's probably mind-blowing what they would actually sell it. But anyway, back to the story. Steve actually shot 2 turkeys and soaked them in kind of a lemon brine, got a good soaking on them, and then barbecued them over mesquite and oak coals. And, mesquite coals, charcoal is kind of the cool thing, but they also do encino, which is oak trees, and it's great, the charcoal there. So if you're in Mexico and you're seeing quite a bit of smoke, a lot of times it's the charcoal pits. What they do is they dig these big pits, and I've seen them several times, but with Ranella we actually saw the whole process. Steve had him kind of walk them through the process, and that is they dig these big giant pits, and they're probably 40 yards long. They're probably 6, 7, 8 yards wide. And they're probably 10 to 12 feet deep. Let's say that might be a stretch. Say 9 to 12 feet deep. And what they do is they fill these big pits with wood. And whether it be mesquite or oak, depending on whatever kind of charcoal they're trying to create, they fill these pits up, and then they have these aluminum, or I guess it would be kind of like aluminum siding or tin roof siding that goes over the top of the pit, if you will. And then they have them ventilated in just a way that they start the wood on fire and get it burning. Then they cover the pits with these big tin, like roof siding material over the top. And then they kind of regulate how fast or slow the burn is on the wood. And that's what creates all the smoke. And I forget if they're burning it real hot and then they back it off and then they just let it simmer, but it just sits in there and it creates, obviously, charcoal. So what a great experience. I saw several ranches that had charcoal going, and I drove by some ranches that you could tell they were doing charcoal. But just a great trip. It's always fun to see new properties. I'm kind of one of these guys that, the grass is always greener on the other side. Dar's the same way. We love looking at new properties. We love scouting new properties and kind of always going into it with the mentality of, I wonder if there's a big buck over there. And it's kind of the adventure and the search. It's rare for us to hunt a ranch more than, 4 or 5 years in a row. And it's not a factor of maybe sometimes we don't like the ranch. Sometimes we'll let our friends hunt the ranch. It's more of a factor of we just love looking at new country and seeing, trying to figure a property out. We love going to a brand new property, trying to figure out all the glassing points, trying to figure out all the angles, the best way to look at country, the best way to pick apart country and find those bucks. And, it's taught us a lot over the years of how to work country, what to look for. It never ceases to amaze me how every single, just when I think I've got it kind of figured out, a new curveball's thrown in, maybe a buck shows up in a place where you never would guess. Just all kinds of stuff. But I definitely love the adventure. And we've got a few spots open for our fully guided Coues deer hunts. A couple spots here and there. And we definitely have opportunities if you guys are interested in do-it-yourself Coues deer ranches. The properties, there are some properties that you can be the exclusive person or group leasing the ranch. There are some properties that have so many tags that, if you only have a group of 4 or 5, you're ultimately going to have to share with another group. And then there's, you have to go based on size. Most ranches are based on size, and then certainly they're based on the amount of deer that they can get through their UMA, which UMA is basically what the government survey tells them they can harvest. What we found normally is if the UMA says 10, you should hunt 5. If the UMA says 8, you should hunt 4. If the UMA says 14, you should hunt 7. But it's a little bit of a moving target because you have all kinds of different owners that have different types of management strategies. And a general consensus is down in Mexico, it's been our experience that obviously, like most property owners, they're going to want to eke out as much money as they can for their property. I've seen it over and over and over and over where a new property will be found, they get the UMA, they get 20 tags on their UMA, they hunt 20 deer. Well, it doesn't take but about 2 years, and you can't find any quality bucks because why? You've shot off all the age class. So if you guys are going to Mexico on your own and you're out there, typically hunt about half of the UMA. And if you can stay at half the UMA, that usually puts you in a pretty good, ratio or pretty good scenario of not, over harvesting your properties and shooting your age class off. Now, I will tell you, there's properties that the owner just says, listen, I get 10 tags. I want you to hunt 10 deer. Well, then you're faced with a situation whether you're like, well, if we decide not to, excuse me, I had to put some chapstick. My lips are just dry as can be. If you decide not to take the 10 deer, you run the risk that someone else is going to step in right behind you and say, yep, we'll do 10. And it gets so competitive down there that sometimes you just have to say, listen, ranch owner, XYZ, your UMA gives you 10. My experience is you should hunt about 5. And if you hunt about 5, you'll be able to maintain quality for the next, 10, 15 years. When you go more than that, you're going to run the risk that, maybe you'll have hunters for the first or second year, but you may not be able to find anybody to hunt your property for the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8 years. And it's been my experience and my opinion that if you over-harvest a Coues deer property, since a lot of people are looking for, 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old bucks, as soon as you take the cream off the top, it can be a slippery slope, and you're left with a bunch of young deer. Well, as an outfitter, that's always a challenge for us of finding new properties and hunting a sustainable amount of deer that makes the ranch owner happy, but also trying to maintain that trophy quality. And I think there's no perfect scenario, because every scenario is different in that, every owner has a different idea. You could be dealing with drought, different climate conditions that make a ranch one year better than the other, better antler growth one year, maybe better rut one year. Maybe it's really windy during that week in January when you go and the deer are down, not moving around. Maybe it's really hot. The activity's not as good. You go during a full moon and, the deer aren't moving, so you have a crappy hunt. Those are all things that play into it. So, I just wanted to kind of keep you up to speed on how the trip went. Found some pretty neat Goulds turkey properties, and I do have a great Goulds turkey season 2017 coming up. I do actually have spots available for 2017 this spring. If you want to go get a Goulds turkey or two, give me a shout on my email at jscottoutdoors@gmail.com. Also on Instagram, you can hit me up at jscottoutdoors, or on my business Facebook page, JScott Outdoors on Facebook, and I can get you slotted in. Right now, we're doing Goulds turkey about the third week in April through the first 2 weeks in May. And like I said, I've got some slots here and there, and would love to fill those up. I help people every year that complete the Royal Slam. I help people every year that complete their World Slam. The Royal Slam is when you shoot the Osceola, the Eastern, the Rio, the Merriam, and the Goulds. And the World Slam is when you throw the Oscillated in there down in Campeche, Mexico. That's I've helped a lot of people do their World Slams too. So, yeah, Goulds Turkey. You can visit my website, gouldsturkeyhunt.com, to check it out. You can also go on my YouTube channel. I have a specific playlist. I think there's 65 or 70 Goulds turkey hunt videos on YouTube, and I video every Goulds turkey hunt. So, I mean, you can literally, I video virtually every hunt, and you can go on there and see exactly what the hunt's like. Also, for those of you that maybe can't afford to go on a Goulds turkey hunt, I'll give a little plug to the Desert Christian Archers in Arizona. They actually bought a hunt from us, and they're doing a Goulds turkey hunt raffle. And Dara and I are doing a turkey hunting seminar March 21st at Calvary Church. They're off of I-17 freeway. I believe it's between Cactus and Thunderbird on the west side of I-17. They're selling tickets right now for $10 a ticket, and they are going to be raffling off that hunt. Now, that's a 2018 hunt. If I have some slots open for 17 and you want to go this year, we can potentially make that happen. I'm sorry, I'm driving down the road, so I don't have the website where you can actually buy the tickets, but you can go on my Instagram page, and there's a flyer that the Desert Christian Archers did, and the website is on there. I believe it's desertchristianarchers.org/turkey hunt, and then maybe raffle. I'm not sure, but if you go on Desert Christian Archers, I think you can find it. If you go on my website, you can also send me an email, and I'll be happy to forward it to you. jscottoutdoors@gmail.com. Guys, I want to thank you guys for listening and giving me so much loyalty and support of this podcast. I want to thank my sponsors, GoHunt.com, Insider, use the J. Scott promo code. You get a $50 Coues gift card. And, guys, I also got pretty exciting news I'm going to announce right now. Coues.com. Coues has stepped up to sponsor the J. Scott Outdoors podcast. Jason Hairston and his crew over at Coues are going to be a sponsor here at J. Scott Outdoors, and we've got some kind of cool promotional things to announce here in a later podcast. But it's an easy one for me. I've used Coues since they came out, and Dar and I, that's all we wear. That's the only hunting gear that we use. And I'm sold on Jason Hairston's will to make the absolute best product out there, the most lightweight, most durable. There's a happy medium between both of those characteristics, and I think Jason and his crew over at Coues do an unbelievable job. So super excited to announce Coues as the sponsor, and we're going to be kind of having some promos coming with that. And phonescope.com, use the JScott16 promo code and you get a 10% discount. Cheston Davis and his crew do the best job at being able to put any optic with any phone and letting you take photos and video. And then the Outdoorsman's, Cody Nelson, the Optics Authority, the Outdoorsman's in Phoenix, 1-800-291-8065 or outdoorsmans.com. If you use the J. Scott promo code, you get a 10% discount over there. Guys, thanks again for your support. And, I appreciate all the love on Instagram as well. You can hashtag J. Scott Outdoors or J. Scott Outdoors Podcast. Love it. I see all of those. Love all the Instagram messages. If you send me an email, I will return it. If you send me a text, I will return it. If for some reason I don't, I'm either scouting or I'm off fishing or doing something. But I take that very, very seriously, and I love to connect with you guys, the listeners. So I just thank each and every one of you for your support. And, guys, that's all I got for today. God bless you. And don't forget, the Utah draw applications are coming up here in about, I think they're 1 week away. And we're actually going to have a couple of great Utah big game draw podcast episodes coming up here over the next couple days. So if you haven't applied for Utah, you might want to wait and check out a couple of these great podcasts breaking down the units, the different animals, and finding some of those hidden gem hunts. I've got some great guests lined up here. So, guys, God bless you. We'll talk to you later.